What is going on? John Middlekauff, 3 and Out podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you may listen. Live on AMP. Download Amazon AMP. All of our content live all week, as well as this YouTube page. Smash the like button. Subscribe to the page. Give us a thumbs up. Leave a comment. Share the content with your friends. Couple big stories that happened over Memorial Day weekend we will dive into. DeAndre Hopkins and Jimmy Garoppolo has some injury issues. But first, you want to go to a football game this fall? You want to go to a college football game? Do you want to go to an NFL game? I got you covered. Here's what you do. You download the Gametime app. Just go to your smartphone, download Gametime. Fastest growing ticket app in America. Happens to be the official ticketing app of this podcast, 3 and Out. And here's what you do. You sign up. You want to go to a concert. You want to go to a football game. You want to go to a baseball game. You want to go to a comedy show. And use the promo code JOHN, J-O-H-N, and get $20 off. Very easy to use. Download the Gametime app, promo code JOHN. Have a good time on me. I don't even need to thank you. Just hammer that promo code. Download Gametime, promo code JOHN. Okay, let's start with a story that made the rounds this weekend. And it really goes back to when the Raiders officially signed Jimmy Garoppolo. Because typically when you sign a free agent, there's a scheduled press conference, right? 1 o'clock, Jimmy Garoppolo will meet the media, come talk to him. And of course, that press conference got pushed back. And then there were OTA practices that eventually become open to the media, and Jimmy Garoppolo was not present. And then there were some comments by Davante Adams. My timeline's a little messed up. And he made some things like, I'm not on board with what we're doing. And then you start adding all the pieces of the puzzle up, and trying to put it all together, what all makes sense once the story breaks of Jimmy Garoppolo's leaked contract that he failed the physical when he was signing with the Las Vegas Raiders. And they had to put clauses in there. He had to get a second surgery, which even goes back to his San Francisco days when Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers thought there was a chance that he could have returned for either the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, which clearly he could not have because his foot was all messed up. And maybe he didn't know it. Clearly, something happened in the MRI. It wasn't good to go. And my big issue is not with Jimmy Garoppolo failing a physical. This is 2 years in a row. Jimmy Garoppolo could not pass a physical at the time of free agency. So that is nothing new with this player. He is a quarterback who is often injured. According to my memory bank, he was traded to the 49ers. He was never a full-time starter, obviously behind Tom Brady, but he got hurt in those 4 games when Tom Brady was suspended for Deflategate. Remember, the second game, he hurt his shoulder. Then he gets traded to the 49ers. His second season, which was his first year as a full-time starter, he tore his ACL. Then the Super Bowl year, fully healthy. And then from there on out, always injured. 2020, missed a bunch of games, which led them to drafting Trey Lance. The Trey Lance's rookie year, he got injured. Shoulder, thumb. Obviously last year, foot. So this guy has a long, long history of durability. And here's my thing with the Raiders is they got rid of Derek Carr. Okay, I get it, right? They were not a philosophical match, right? They just didn't work scheme-wise. Josh McDaniels, him, didn't see eye to eye. Derek had one of the worst years of his career, whatever. But you need a quarterback. And clearly they didn't draft one. They don't have other quarterbacks. What's his name? Stidham signed with the Denver Broncos, who showed a little signs of life last year in one of his 2 starts against the 49ers. So they go all in on Jimmy Garoppolo, which he's not a type guy that you can go all in on. Just because he's always hurt. And then when he heals, he gets hurt again. And I think the biggest question mark here is all the chips are in the middle of the table for a franchise that is just desperate. Let's face it. I mean, they just never win, ever. They've had 2 winning seasons in over 2 decades. In a league full of parity, where even the crappiest teams figure out a way for some successful seasons. And their coach now, I think, listen, a lot of success as an offensive coordinator. A lot of people have a lot of success with Tom Brady. He's gotten 2 opportunities outside the Belichick umbrella, and it hasn't been pretty. Last year was an embarrassment. And now he is tied at the hip, clearly, with Jimmy Garoppolo, which, listen, if Jimmy Garoppolo can play 17 games, I think the Raiders could be competitive. You know, they could try to go above 500, 9-8, right? They lack some talent. They're clearly not as good with the 49ers, but he's proven to be better than half the league at quarterback. If he's your starting quarterback, he sees eye to eye with your offensive coordinator, you can function. The problem is he's going to get hurt. Like, it is inevitable. History shows us that. To think that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to avoid injury would be malpractice from Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler. But they don't have a choice now. Like, they don't have other options. So when I see Florio tweeting about they got outs, they don't have to pay him, well, all that is great. And, okay, Jimmy Garoppolo can't eventually pass a physical. He never gets on the field. They are fucked. I mean, Brian Hoyer is currently their backup quarterback. If Jimmy Garoppolo were to disappear and the Raiders had to operate with Brian Hoyer, I think they'd win 4 games, max. So when I look back at these quotes from Davante Adams, listen, I don't necessarily agree. I mean, you can't agree from a football standpoint, leaving the Green Bay Packers. Said over and over, I understand needing a change of scenery. Hell, I did it last year. Best thing I ever did. So I get where he wanted to move back to the West Coast, play for, his childhood team. I understand it. Now, from a football standpoint, like, you leave the Green Bay Packers to go to the Raiders, you're going to downgrade. And he immediately did. But I think when you dive into his comments in that Ringer article, was it kind of directed at the Jimmy Garoppolo situation? Like, listen, he said over and over, I didn't come for Derek Carr. But I did come like, what's our plan at quarterback? It's not a guy whose foot's all messed up, who needed a second surgery, and who's not going to be able to practice his offseason. And more than likely, history would show us going to get injured again. What are we going to do? And the answer is you would be screwed. And it's like, oh, they just, going for Caleb Williams. Does Josh McDaniels have the rope to go for Caleb Williams? Like, let's just say it's a disaster and he wins 5-6 games. Are we sure that Josh McDaniels in a market, like, let's face it, the Las Vegas Knights come out of nowhere, created an NHL team, boom, kick ass. Hell, Mark Davis hosts a WNBA team, won the championship last year. I just saw someone tweeted it out over the weekend. They're setting early records in the WNBA through 4 games. I'm sure a lot of you have watched some of those games. And, like, the problem is in Vegas, kind of a bright light city. You can't be really shitty and expect anyone to care about you. And Mark knows this. And I just think that if this season goes wrong, and clearly they're tied to a guy who's often injured, it could be a disaster for Josh McDaniels. So I'm a little surprised. Like, I understood why they were interested in him, but the moment you saw that, do you pivot, not draft a quarterback high? I mean, it feels like they're all in the middle of the ocean and their boat's already got some water on it, and more. I would bet on it sinking. I just would, because history would show I can't bet on Jimmy Garoppolo staying healthy. So I think it's insane that they've gone down this road, regardless of, like, the contract gives them out. Well, great, cut him. What the hell are you going to do? And the answer is, it would not be pretty. Before we dive into what's next, do you know that Angie's List is now Angie, your home for everything home? And as someone who is currently house shopping and who has bought property before, you walk in, you go, well, I need to fix the kitchen. I want to improve this bathroom. I want to fix some stuff in the backyard. And then you go, well, I don't do this for a living. Where do I even start? Who do I even contact? That's where Angie has 20 years of experience combined with new tools to simplify the process. Over 220,000 pros in their network. They can help you get the best price for your product. They have new projects that are priced upfront and clearly lays out the cost before you buy. With Angie, you can request quotes from multiple pros in your area. The pros in your network are locally based. In just a few taps in the Angie app or click on the site, you can have Angie tackle your home service project from start to finish. Download the free Angie mobile app today or visit Angie.com. That's ANGI.com. The other story is that DeAndre Hopkins was released by the Arizona Cardinals. And I think on the most basic level, the reason he was released is they could not trade his contract, clearly, right? No one was taking on basically $20 million for DeAndre Hopkins. Now, a lot of people have slid into my DMs and asked me, like, why would they cut him? Like, what is the point? And the simple answer is they don't want him on the team. They don't want him around. He clearly hasn't been around like in OTAs, but they want to rid themselves of him as a player. They value more eating the money to send him away than keeping him around their new, fresh culture and their rebuild that they're starting. And I think big picture, they are trying to bottom out. And that's a whole nother question. If they are the worst team in the league, which I think it's always easy to say at the beginning of the season, and I did that last year, like a lot of people did. I'm like, oh, Seattle's going to be the worst team. Oh, the Giants. And they both made the playoffs. So I'm not as confident doing that. I'm a little rattled by last season, but I think a lot of people, and rightfully so, and myself included, feel pretty confident this team's going to stink. I mean, obviously their quarterback's injured. They got a lot of things. Their talent on their team is not really there. But, like, they cut this guy, and now he's a free agent. So you don't have to take that contract. That is not your problem. You can sign him to whatever contract he wants. Now, one of his sticking points, which is actually very understandable, is him going, well, if Odell Beckham got $15 million, look at my stats the last 3 or 4 years compared to that guy who gets injured all the time. Now, Hopkins got some red flags, suspended last year, some PED issues, has been banged up, not a big practice player, is pretty productive when he's on the field, never been fast. So it's like, well, his speed's diminishing. He's kind of got, his game's different, but kind of that Anquan Bolden thing. Like, his game's not predicated on speed. Like, his game's aging well because that's just how he's always played. He's always been slow. He's a contested catch, jump ball, productive guy in the red zone. He's just a football player. I mean, when he's playing well, he is a very, very good football player. I think at times, I guess he had some seasons where he was, I wouldn't go elite, but, top 5 wide receiver. He's no longer that guy. No one was going to pay him. I think his problem is going to be, because I get where he's going, like, I'm not taking less than $15 million. Well, who's giving you $15 million? One, the money's not really out there. Because the teams he'd want to go to, the Chiefs, the Bills, all the good teams, they're not really flush with cap space. So that's not happening. So would he be willing to do one of those purely non-guaranteed deals? Remember, Darrelle Revis did that. Now, that doesn't give you any security. Things go wrong at the end of the season, they can cut you. But I think if he wants to go to one of the teams that he's desiring to go to, he's going to have to kind of think outside the box. If he just wants to go to a team, bad teams are not going to sign him. It doesn't make any sense. And if you're him, like, he's not going to be interested in those teams. Obviously, everyone's talking about the Bills and the Chiefs. Like, if I am him, he has made an astronomical amount of money. And I'm not one to tell you to take pay cuts or, I don't care how much money you make. Whether you make $100 million or $10, it's irrelevant to me. But from a football standpoint, if you want to have success, and money's never going to be an issue in your life, given how much you've made, these last 5-6 years playing in the league, like, I don't think it's crazy to take a little less or an incentive-based deal to go play with Josh Allen, to go play with Patrick Mahomes. And specifically, if Andy and the Chiefs are interested, like, that's probably where I'd go, bro. Like, I mean, that would be the team I'd be sniffing around. Because even with the Bills, you go, well, I get Diggs has kind of been up in arms, but they do got Stephon Diggs, who's been one of the best players in the league at his position for a while now. They just drafted a tight end really high. They still got Dawson Knox. With the Chiefs, Juju Smith's not on the team anymore. Obviously, Tyreek's long gone. Beside the tight end and the running back, like, you get a lot of juice, and the guy will clearly throw you the ball. So to me, that's what I would do. Obviously, financially, you're not going to get what you want. And I get being mad, like, well, I'm better than Odell Beckham. Well, true. That's true, but that's not always the way the world works. Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson, I would rather have those guys than Deshaun Watson. Well, those guys got way less than Deshaun Watson in terms of guaranteed. It's sometimes the way it works. Just because someone does a terrible contract or a terrible business deal does not mean the next person is going to get that amount. And that's probably the case here. And if he just wants to take the most money, which will be interested, like, I don't totally blame. That's kind of the way football players think because their career's relatively shorter. But to me, if I'm him, the Chiefs, I'm actively working with Veach and Andy. Like, how do we make this happen?